Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning into Health Podcast Show, the place to be to get the insights of leaders working at the intersection of health, science, and media. I'm your host, Dan Kendall, and this episode features a recording from the 2025 Health Podcast Summit, which was held on October 1st and 2nd. In total, we interviewed 42 speakers in 37 sessions that span topics across health, science, policy, and podcasting. You can wait to get access to all the sessions as we publish them here on your favorite platform, or you can get access to all the recordings, links, and resources by visiting our website at healthpodcast.org. Again, that's healthpodcast.org. Enjoy the show. Welcome to this session of Health Podcast Summit 2025. I'm your host, Dan Kendall, and our next guest is Greg Wasserman. Greg is the head of relationships at the podcast hosting platform RSS.com, one of the sponsors of this year's summit. And he's worked across media sales, content repurposing, and podcast hosting platforms. His philosophy is that life is about time and relationships, and this guides his view that podcasting is a powerful business development tool. In this session, Greg reveals how healthcare sales and marketing teams can bypass gatekeepers by inviting prospects as podcast guests, creating 90-minute relationship-building conversations. And he shows how conducting pre-calls can help you avoid losing listeners in the first 3 minutes of your podcast, while also giving you the opportunity to build genuine relationships. I'm a big advocate for pre-calls. I'd like to take a moment to thank all our sponsors and partners who make Health Podcast Summit 2025 possible. A special thanks to our gold sponsor, BetterHelp, and to our silver sponsor, ZS. Please visit healthpodcastsummit.com for links to all these organizations and special offers. Let's dive into this conversation with Greg Wasserman. Greg Wasserman, thank you so much for joining me at Health Podcast Summit.
I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited for everyone that gets a chance to listen to us.
Greg, I'm going to start off with a word of gratitude because none of this would have happened without your encouragement. We're going to talk about your saying in life, and I met you over a year ago, I guess almost a year and a half ago now, and you have been so interested in the work that we've been doing to try to elevate evidence-based health, science, and medicine information. And I just am really grateful because when I was sharing with you some of the early ideas around whether we should do this, what it would be, and how it would all come together, you took just a really exceptional interest in it, and I'm very grateful for it. None of this would have happened without your support and encouragement and connecting us with Jenny Wright, the lady who's helped us put together this whole virtual event. So thank you, Greg, first of all, as we get kicked off here. Everyone has Greg to thank. Yes, our team has done a huge amount of work around it, but Greg was the person outside the business that was saying, you really should do this. Let me help you out. So thank you, Greg.
Hey, my pleasure.
Greg, I wanted to have you on as a guest because you've worked across the whole podcast ecosystem. You're based out in California. You've worked across AI and hosting and a variety of other things. And I really wanted to get your input on what we in healthcare, who think about healthcare all the time, what we should be looking at in the whole podcast space. So can you just give us a quick overview about the sort of things that you've been involved with and maybe any common threads between the different roles?
Yeah, so I started my career in media sales. So understanding I need more downloads in order so I can make money, and that kind of mentality, which then took me into the listening platforms. So working with podcasters and going, look, you have a show, it's on our platform. How do I help you grow that show? Then I did content repurposing, and the whole mindset there is, okay, let's get out of downloads and let's start thinking about how do we really hit an audience where they are as opposed to force them to listen. And now I'm the head of relationships at RSS.com, which is a podcast hosting platform. So across that thread, the entire thing that I continue to see is packaging. And how do we get our message out there so that a consumer, so that a listener has the desire to pay attention to what your message is? And I see that happen too often where we don't do a good job. Titles aren't there, the images, the descriptions, even your description of what your podcast is about. And if we think about it from an analogy, if I go into a grocery store, maybe I don't know which mayonnaise I want to get, or maybe the mayonnaise I'm buying is the one that's been marketing to me. So it's literally then the marketing of that product. It doesn't really separate. I can do Miracle Whip or something else. And that's how you have to think about it from your podcast, and why the health podcast ecosystem is so important, because what your message is, what you're trying to get out there, you're trying to reach an audience who you are supposed to be the authority. But if they don't know who you are, then how do you help them understand if I'm talking about X, Y, and Z, why should I listen to X, Y, and Z from you? And that goes into the packaging of that message.
You and I first met when you were, I imagine you had multiple aspects to your role, but you were running the Slack community for Cast Magic. And I saw the support that you gave to me and so many other people who were using that software. We still do use that software, and just the connections that you made. And as I got to know you and I had the chance to meet you out at the podcast event out in Los Angeles a couple of years ago, 2024, you shared with me one of your sayings. I'll let you share it with the audience because I don't want to take any of your thunder, but it really resonated in the way that you conduct yourself and through your business. So can you share with the audience what that is?
Yeah, life is about time and relationships. You truly have no clue where one conversation is going to lead. So for me, the curiosity of just meeting people and going, who are you? I mean, that's literally how this has all come together, just understanding your mission. I mean, the fact that your company is mission-based media, and I remember vividly you telling me why you named it mission-based media and what you are all about. And so that alone just built a know, like, and trust and a gravitation where I want to see what you're doing kind of be successful, which then goes into why I'm here speaking to everyone else and understanding like you're trying to build your know, like, and trust. And the power of podcasting allows you to do that, especially in this, I guess, this world that we're living in where there's either misinformation or unsure of what information to go with. So you have to be the authority, and you don't know who's going to listen, the conversations you're going to have, and how that will all ultimately shape the opportunities that will come to you.
Know, like, and trust. Trust has come up a lot in these different sessions that we've been recording for Health Podcast Summit because there is a lack of trust. And one of the things that's really been voiced is that it's hard to get people's attention and build trust in a 30-second clip on TikTok or Instagram. It's even hard to do it on a 3 or 4 minute segment on a news program. So really the power of audio to connect to that soft tissue between people's ears and build that relationship with them in what I, keep observing is very personal spaces. You might look at your work computer and, have messages on there, but you don't invite your work into your kitchen or into your car. You're driving or you're making dinner, but podcasts are something that can spend time with you there. And our first interaction was around community building. And I think community has a real important part about building trust. So, having worked across all these different areas of podcasting and relationship building and community, can you give us some hints about what podcasters are doing to be effective in building that community, building that trust between themselves and their audience?
I'd say the biggest thing that podcasters should be thinking about is don't force the listen. And it goes back to, where I started. Everyone's trying to monetize and they're trying to figure out how do I get more downloads and therefore how can I make money on this podcast? But if you think about what you're doing, you're actually building the trust. And so the more content you're putting out there, not just in from a podcast standpoint, but as you mentioned, a 30-second social post or a 3-minute social post or a LinkedIn post or whatever the content repurposing that you're kind of doing, you're using the power of podcasting to ultimately create this one conversation and then cut it up into different ways that you can get an audience built so that they know, like, and trust you wherever that may be. And if you're bringing a guest on, then even more important, the guest that you're bringing on, you're building the trust and you're helping elevate that person's trust with your audience. So the key piece here is understanding I don't need to drive someone to a download. I don't need to be looking at the metrics of, am I getting more downloads? Think about the overall audience and are they ultimately leading to the results you want. And if we go back to life is about time and relationships, you have no clue where that one piece of content will ultimately take you. We would never have known that today we'd be recording this and speaking to a health podcast summit when you and I first met. And so anyone that's listening and watching this, like, think about that. The more you are flexing that muscle of putting content out there, the more you're being able to build this community, the way you're able to build your know, like, and trust. You don't know where that's going to take you, whether it's going to lead to a business opportunity, whether it's going to lead to a speaking engagement, whether that's going to lead to a researcher reaching out to you and saying, I love what you're doing. I love what you have to say. I want to bring you on to whatever that medium may be. So the power of podcasting is building that know, like, and trust, building that opportunity for wherever those opportunities may be.
So you've certainly helped hundreds, I imagine, podcasters that are starting their podcasts, and we will certainly have a lot of listeners who are novices, and we'll also have some experts. What are some of the things that you've seen podcasters do to be particularly effective as they work to build that community and that trust?
Goes back to packaging, right? So making sure that you have your description, you have a good artwork, your titles. I see too often titles being titled with the episode number and a person's name. So let's say this was episode 3, Dan Kendall talking about X, Y, and Z. No offense, most people probably don't know who you are, and no one really cares that it's episode 3. So think about packaging. The first thing that a person's going to see is, why am I going to give, in a sense, Greg as a host, my time to Greg to listen to an episode with Dan? That doesn't really help you. So you've got to be able to go, what are we talking about? And that should be your hook. And that's going to draw someone in. I know we say clickbait, but it's not clickbait. It's more of just packaging. It's the marketing piece. And the other piece is then audio quality. Too often podcasters get hung up on, I have to have the right equipment. I have to have $100,000 in studio and so forth. I mean, look at your setup versus mine. I'm still doing it. I don't have the professional mic. And even though I work in podcasting, that hasn't stopped me from being a guest on over 100 shows, talking on summits like this. So don't let the equipment be the quote unquote thing that stops you from actually getting your message out there. Because if you truly have something to say, if you believe that there's a message that you want to convey to the world, the equipment should not be the reason that stops you.
Yeah, I think just getting started is a key piece. And frankly, if I had known how difficult podcasting is or how difficult it is to create a successful podcast, I probably would never have started. So that naivety on my part, or ignorance, however you want to position it, was a benefit for me because I didn't realize how hard it really was to get started in terms of building good quality audio, building good stories, finding interesting people, carving out the opportunity. I was doing all my own editing to begin with. And of course, you have to build the website. So there's lots of pieces that you need to put together. You've mentioned the episode titles. I think it's certainly not clickbait, as you alluded to. It's really about, I call it, it's probably the wrong name for it, but I call it a brand value promise. Like, what is the person going to get when they click? Because they are exchanging an irreplaceable resource, which is their time, and they have things all over the screen that they can choose that isn't you. So when they click on that, what are they getting? What's going to be the deliverable that's going to help them on their journey of transformation? Because no matter what we're doing, we're always changing. And from the beginning of the episode to the end of the episode, what transformation, what additional synapses, ideas, thoughts, wisdom are you going to impart in that 20 or 30 minutes that you're spending with that person in that very private environment that they normally only share with their family and friends?
100%. Why am I giving you my attention when there's so many other ways to give attention these days? Think about, I mean, anyone that's listening, just think about a movie that you loved that when you saw the trailer, like, right? So it was the team that put together the trailer or figuring out how do we market this, and they maybe did a terrible job. You know your content the best. You know your audience the best. So package it accordingly so that they actually walk away with that value prop.
Let's talk about the business model a little bit, Greg, because you've certainly seen a lot of different business models evolve as well. So, what are some of the ways that you found podcasters are making money with their platforms or shows or however you want to position it?
So it goes back to the only way you can make money is with downloads and therefore sponsors, right? And that's what my background is. That's what the industry kind of tells you. But what I love to think about is depending on what your business is, you are the ultimate business. So let's say you're a dietitian and you are one-on-one coach, you lead courses, your business is being used for that podcast. You're not looking at, I need to get more downloads in order to get a sponsor. You are the sponsor. So at the core of this is either I'm bringing guests on so that I've got more content and that those people that I'm bringing as guests could be hiring me as the consultant, as the dietitian, whatever my business may be. Or maybe you're a researcher. I have a podcaster that I know, they're a researcher and they were reading all these research reports and they didn't understand them. And they're like, you know what? I'll start a podcast, bring the researcher on and elevate that. But now the connection they're building there is incredible. They're not looking at it from a monetization. They're looking at, all right, I now have 52 conversations with other industry experts that I never would have been able to have before because I started this podcast. So for them, they're not thinking, how do I make money through this podcast? It's the podcast that's ultimately driving the opportunities that they may never have had, the doors that are getting open. Maybe they're being asked to be in research reports or evaluate pieces. Like, goes back to the thing, life is about time relationships. You have no clue where those conversations will go. So yes, there's a lot of work, as you said, the naive of the work that's involved in this. But if you take away that as I need to make money or I need this podcast to make money, and you think about how can I use this as a core component of my business? I always tell people it is the greatest business development tool and the content marketing engine you could ever have, depending on how you use it. But if you're a health tech company, imagine you are trying to sell your tech company or your tech to individuals or other companies. You've got a sales team that's going out there and they're calling, they're emailing, delete. Look, I work in sales. I get it. But if you can go ahead and now say, hey, I have a podcast. I would love to bring your CMO, your head researcher, whoever that is, onto my podcast. That's 52 people that you never would have been able to have a conversation with. 30 minutes of a pre-call, which I highly recommend everyone do the pre-call. And that's 60 minutes, maybe max, on a recording. It's an hour and a half that you just built a relationship with this person that you would never have been able to because any call that they would have answered would have felt like a sales call. But now this is a relationship building. And the best part is that person is now going to promote you to their network. Imagine how powerful that is to get someone on your show that you're trying to quote, quote, sell and then promote you to their network. You don't care about the downloads. You now have those 52 conversations, the validation and their promotion, and you made them look good. You built a relationship out of it. So there's so many different ways to think about how, especially everyone here in the health world, can make money off of it. That takes you beyond, I need to grow downloads. I need to make this massive so that I can get paid on a sponsorship standpoint.
100%. For this audience, I carried a medical device sales bag. I've worked with a lot of pharma companies. They've all got sales teams out there knocking on doors, driving around the US and all over the world, trying to spend time with health professionals. Very expensive professionals trying to call on a very expensive profession and trying to exchange that information in a one-to-one environment. And then a lot of the materials that marketing, I used to be in medical device marketing. I get it. I've worked with a lot of pharma marketing teams. We make stuff that says, look at me, look at my PDF, look at my brochure. We made a video. There's a new website. There's a patient website. There's a health professional portal. There's an event you can go to. There's a webinar. Why don't you come over to our dinner? All these different things say, give me your time, give me your time, give me your attention. Whereas what I love about the podcast is you've got stuff to do. Take me with you. I love the idea of a sales rep. I wish I had this when I was carrying a bag, going around with a postcard and saying, doctor, I know you're really busy, but I think there's somebody on here that you trained with or that you mentioned in one of our previous conversations, or you might know her from her work at whatever medical center. She's speaking about X. I know you're busy. I just want to leave this behind. Scan this QR code and listen to it on your drive home. Even if they don't listen, that professional is probably going to really appreciate the fact that that sales rep has shown empathy and said, I get it. I'll fit into your lifestyle the way that you can consume this, instead of saying, give me your full and undivided attention. And you'll get a lot more than the 3-minute video or the 8-minute video or the 60 seconds that somebody might send on a website. You're actually going to be in the car with them on the drive home, allowing them to interface. And then what you've also got there is something that's shareable. You can then, that professional can then share that on to their colleagues, share that on to other people around the country, as opposed to just simply having a brochure in their hand.
Nailed it. I mean, you said exactly what I said, the other part of what I do, because yeah, as a salesperson, nothing's worse than marketing saying, here's your white paper, here's something to go email them, look at me. And it's like, if I was a sales rep and I could say, Dan was on my show, and this is a quote from Dan that you people would want to connect with, that is so much more valuable. You nailed it. And that is why I believe podcasting and the power of having this as a conversation is incredible, for the business development, for the relationship building, for the content engine that you get, but also the intimacy that you kind of mentioned as well, that I'm now in your ears. Or, as I always like to joke, there's a podcast out there I never listen to. I can't say never. I hardly ever listen to it. Every Thursday, I wait for his newsletter. And I even use that as content. In the bottom of his newsletter, it's like, hey, here's the most recent episode of my podcast. So there's so many ways that you can go ahead and promote still good content without trying to force a person to just listen. But that content's all coming from this original conversation that's coming from your podcast.
That example I just gave of medical or pharma sales reps, that's just one example. Obviously, you can do that with direct to patient as well. I just saw a friend of mine over the weekend and he drove me by his new practice. And there in the lobby, right next to the reception desk, is a wall full of brochures. And none of them had a QR code on the front that says, hey, here's this treatment, here's some patient information leaflet. None of them had a QR code that says, hey, take this away with you. It might be that they don't want to take a piece of paper that they're going to lose. They might want to share it with somebody that might be in a different state, or share it with their partner. They can start listening to it as soon as they get in the car if they were able to take a podcast with them. And they also might have something embarrassing that they don't necessarily want to walk around with a brochure about that particular topic. So again, thinking about your audience, your listener, the people you're trying to reach, and then putting something into their lives in a way that they're able to consume it.
As a non-medical profession who always goes to a doctor's office, most doctors are running late, and it's not their fault. It's usually our fault for probably is the patient running late. But if I'm in there, there's magazines, or there used to be magazines. Now they've realized everyone's on their phone. Well, most of us probably are coming with headphones because we live on those. So why wouldn't you have the QR code and going, hey, while you wait here, did you know that the doctor or this doctor's office has its own podcast, and you can start consuming content that isn't the promotional materials that probably a sales rep is putting in there, or whatever kind of pamphlets that may be. Like, the power, as you said, is to leave there. But now I'm sitting in the doctor's office waiting for my time to be called. I get pulled into the actual waiting, or the waiting room, and I'm like, all right, when's the doctor actually going to walk in here? The nurse takes your blood, whatever that may be. I'm still twiddling my thumbs waiting. I could have started listening to your voice and go, wow, I connected with you even in a different level, or I didn't even realize X, Y, and Z. There's so much that you can go ahead and mold around that is underutilized.
Yeah, I agree. So you mentioned something earlier, Greg, that I want to circle back to, and that's the importance of a pre-call. I talk to a lot of people who say either they don't have time or they don't think that their guests will have time, and they don't want to inconvenience their guests. It's already going to be hard enough to try to find a time for the recording. They don't want to inconvenience them by having an additional call in advance of that. I really push back against that because I know a lot of really successful podcasters do those calls, and I've seen the benefit of them participating in them myself, be either as a guest or as someone who's interviewing someone. So can you give us your perspective of what should be covered? What's the format of a pre-call? Why should you do it? And how do you justify it to someone if you feel guilty for taking their time for that additional 30 minutes?
So let's, I guess, address the guilty component first. That's going to be natural. You're like, I can't believe I'm going to bring them on. It's also the discomfort of asking someone to be a guest in the first place. And that's what I love about podcasting. For the most part, you will never have someone say, no, I don't want to be a guest in your podcast. That's what makes this, and this is why I push it so hard, is if you try to call them and cold call them and sell them, of course they're going to delete you. But you are now literally giving them a platform to talk about themselves, or talk about a topic that they're passionate about, which we all want to do. And for the most part, unless you are an elite level, no one's asking how many downloads you have. The only one that's asking how many downloads you have is probably the PR company that wants to get you as a guest on someone's show. But for the most part, no one's asking what size it is. They're like just grateful that they have this. So that goes to the guilt piece. The reason you want to do the pre-call is a couple. One, as a listener, that's who you always have to be doing this for. Even if you follow my model of it's business development, it's relationship, you're still putting content out there that makes that guest sound good. Of course, make you sound good as a host, but it's all about the listener. So if the listener feels, especially in those first 3 minutes, that you guys don't know each other, this is an awkward setup of a conversation, and the storytelling that's about to be told was already started with a bad story, they're not going to give you any more than those original 2-3 minutes. And I will be the first to admit, I listen to a lot of podcasts. Every Monday, I submit 3 podcasts on my LinkedIn of shows that I think people should listen to. I go through too many shows that never make the list. And sometimes I don't get to hit 3 different episodes because I can't make it past those first few minutes. You don't want to have your audience feeling like they are meeting you and your guest for the first time. So that's one piece. The other side is this is relationship building. Back to the ethos. Life is about time and relationships. I want to be able to work with this person. I don't know what the capacity is, but I'm bringing this person on because I truly value what they have to say. I don't want this to be, thank you, you came on my show, it's transactional and we're done. It is, how do we enter each other's worlds so that we can continue to work together, whatever that looks like. And so the pre-call opens that. It also allows you to start understanding, what are we talking about? I know in my ideas of what I'm bringing you on for, but maybe there's something that you would want to. And so that allows you to have that free flowing conversation that may open up after a half hour of talking, of saying, you know what, this is it. Take us as an example. We did a pre-call before we did this recording, and that gave us an idea of like what questions we want to really highlight. That makes it so much better of a recording as opposed to we went into this cold, what are we talking about? If we used that pre-call as the quote unquote recording, everyone that's watching this right now, you would probably be, where's this flow? What's the story? Where's this going? Because we didn't have a flow to that. So now we have a story. You come in prepared with like, here's the flow. We're going to take this. And that's the core piece of being a host. Host is storytelling. You're doing this for your listeners. And if you aren't doing that pre-call, your listener's going to know because of the awkwardness. They're going to know because the stories aren't being cohesive. And they're going to know because you probably did a terrible job editing because you don't want to spend so much time editing. So you now are making your life so much easier and you're making your guest look so much better. All those are reasons for that pre-call.
I agree with everything you said there. I was sitting here thinking, did we get a chance to do a pre-call? You and I have spoken a few different times about various things, and one was a formal pre-call, so I'm glad we ticked that box. But yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think 2 things that I asked, one of these I certainly asked at the beginning, and I continued to ask the second question is after we finished up the recording with my guests on Digital Health Today, I would ask, how did that go for you? How was it? Is there anything I could have done to make it better? The communication, the email, the update, the link, anything like that? And, I'd say, look, I really want your feedback. I want you to I'm not trying to have you be nice to me. I really want to know, was something unclear? Could I do it? And they would give me feedback about what I could do better, which is part of the reason why I found podcasting so hard, because there's lots of things about, photographs and links and, communication and making sure everything's right and the technology works and all that sort of stuff, and people know what to expect. The other question that I would always ask, and I encourage everyone to ask about it, and it sort of ties in with your comments around relationship and community, is at the end, after I stopped recording, I would ask the guest, I hope this has been a good experience for you. Thanks for your feedback. I really want this to reflect well on your role in healthcare and the things that you're doing. Given your position, who else do you think I could talk to that would benefit, and serve my audience? And the people who you respect have people that they respect. And then that suddenly gives you an opportunity to say, hey, would you mind if it's not too much, if I gave you a little blurb, could you ping that over to her and just say that you had a good experience talking and see if it's okay for us to be connected? And that was a way that you can really up your game in terms of building those connections and building those relationships and also serving your audience.
And now let's take this back to the sales component that we're talking about. If now I'm asking the person on my show who else I should be talking to, I mean, there's your referral net right there, as opposed to like, all right, we finished this call. Now I got to go cold call someone else that's like the person that just came on my show, instead of this person telling me, yeah, I know Joe over at whatever company X, Y, and Z. I'll make an introduction. This was great talking with you. I really enjoyed. Thank you so much. Yada yada. Once again, it's all about building that relationship. And if you take the step of, because I know there's a lot in the healthcare field that are doing solo episodes, and they're all just, this is me being able to talk about myself and my views and my information. So you don't have the guessing component there, but you should be. This is all about feedback. How do I ask my audience? How do I go ahead and create a newsletter, create some form that I can ask feedback? So what you're referring to is the feedback of the guests that came on here. But everyone that has a podcast, you should always be understanding who's listening, who's engaging, who's signing up for your newsletter, who's doing all of these, so you have an understanding so you can continue to pull them and get the feedback. Is my show too long? Am I rambling? Am I not giving you the information that you would find valuable? You can look in your data, you can look in your stats in some regards. RSS.com is a hosting platform. We give you the downloads pieces, but you still don't know who those people are. Therefore, you need the ways to get that feedback. And that is a great way to do it.
Yep. For healthcare, certainly LinkedIn, platforms like Doximity, having a newsletter and making sure you're providing value. That was another thing I did in the very early days. A lot was make sure that I had a PDF that accompanied each episode and encourage people to go and download that. And that gave me an opportunity to look at their email addresses and say, oh, this person's with the pharma company. This was with Med Device. This one's a provider. I wonder if I could just ping them an email, a real personal one, say, hey, I saw you listened, you accessed this download about this problem. I would love to find out more because I have some other guests I'd like to invite on. I'd love your opinion about, questions I should ask them or, who else I should be inviting on, understand more about why you're interested in solving this particular problem. So something I always try to prioritize is serve the listener. Second is serve the listener. And the third thing is serve the listener. And if you can do those three things, then maybe you'll have a little bit of time to try to serve the interests of the guests. So Greg, I want to give you an opportunity. You're now at rss.com. And I know just by the nature of the person that you are, that you also have something for the participants in this. So I really appreciate your personal support and rss.com support of this summit. Can you just share a little bit about rss.com, what you guys are doing and some of the offers you might have available for people who are tuning into this?
Yeah, so RSS.com is one of the largest podcast hosting companies out there. So I always like to say, just like you need to host your website somewhere, GoDaddy, Squarespace, whatever, your podcast needs to be hosted somewhere. So RSS.com is the easy, simple solution that helps you do that. And we distribute your podcast to all the listening platforms. As I like to say, don't peg your podcast listener into listen to me on X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, at this point, listen on wherever that consumer is. My background is about 30% of listens don't come on the Apples and Spotify's. So if you are only limiting yourself to those two platforms, you're missing out. So our platform, rss.com, allows you to distribute to basically all those places. Just like with the health network that you've got and everyone that's listening, it's incredibly important to control and have the ability to have the freedom to speak about what it is you want. And that's part of the rss.com model, because with an RSS feed, you control your voice, you control your information, and you can make sure that it's always out there and it's not being taken down, because platforms will do that. Get started. It's easy. I'll give you all a promo code. You can use RSS Get Started, and that you can go to rss.com. If you already have a podcast, you can switch and get 6 months free. As you've already said, we met over a community. I run our community with rss.com. I'm always pumping out information. As I said, I've already promoted this. So a lot of people, hopefully, that are listening and watching us are also part of my community with rss.com. But yeah, those are the great ways to think about it. You can take your audio, and that's another thing we didn't talk about. If I'm a voice, but I'm not wanting to go on video, great. We can go ahead and still get you on YouTube. And there's a function that gets you audio into video, and you can still be on YouTube.
One thing we haven't spoken about yet is the role of video in all of this. We've talked about relationships, communities, and audio and pre-calls, but what are your thoughts on video? How should people be thinking about it?
So video, and I know you've got Tom Webster is coming on board. So you've got Brian Barletta and Tom Webster. If you guys haven't checked out those recordings, go ahead. They're speaking. Amazing people. Sounds profitable. But Tom Webster recently just talked about the fact that video, and everyone's talking about YouTube, I've got to be on YouTube, that 50% of the time being spent is still not watching it. And that's why the importance of audio. And I like to talk about this all the time. Breaking the fourth wall is unless you're doing a solo episode, you already are breaking the fourth wall, meaning you're already talking to your audience. But if you have a guest on there, you should be breaking the fourth wall. Don't make them feel like they're a fly in the wall of this conversation, which goes back to the why do I do a pre-call? You want your audience, as you said, audience. Why do we want to make sure that they feel like they're being incorporated? So breaking that fourth wall. So if you're doing video, which is a great platform for discoverability, another platform to build an audience, you still want to make sure whatever you're saying that a person who's only listening can still understand. And I've likened this to, if anyone's in the sports world, there's always going to be a color commentator and there's always going to be a play-by-play person. Why? Because the play-by-play is going to literally make you feel like you know what's going on. If it's baseball, it's like, oh, X, Y, and Z through to X, Y, and Z. I don't even have to be watching to understand what's going on screen because you're helping me. And then the color commentators bringing in their own 2 cents, their own views, their expertise, whatever it may be. So you've got to make sure that if you are doing video, no one says you have to, like that is a discovery engine. It's an opportunity, but it's not something you have to do. But your audio, people will stop listening when the audio quality is poor, and they'll stop listening when they feel isolated and as if I can't listen to this because I have to watch it. And that is a poor user experience. So making sure that if you do video, you keep those things in mind.
Greg, as we wrap up our time together, is there anything else that you want to make sure the audience hears and knows as they go forward and create health podcasts?
Consistency is key. Consistency is going to be key in anything you do. Resilience. I mean, you aren't where you are today in the profession you're at without having gone through whatever trainings, whatever medical school, years of it, depending on where you are. Or if you're with your background on the sales side, you still had to go through, you weren't going as a doctor, but you were going through plenty of trainings in order to be able to understand who you were trying to sell to, what the issues were. It's all consistency. So with podcasts, that becomes a piece, which goes back to why I believe life is about time and relationships. You have no clue where any conversation, you may feel like you're talking to the void, which is what most of us end up doing. I mean, right now, I have no clue who's going to watch this. And that's the joys of this. But the greatest piece is the LinkedIn post that someone may follow up and going, hey, I listened to you. So the more consistent you are, the more that you continue to do this, get past that 8-episode hump, get past that 50-episode hump, and just keep going with it. That's where you'll find the most success. Not success in terms of downloads, but success in terms of doors that are opening. And if you are only doing, which a lot in the healthcare profession do, we're just going to do a 4-episode little segment on one topic, then great. Produce it, make it there, but know that's evergreen content. So don't stop going, these 4 episodes are done, and I don't continue to promote it, notify people, and let it go, because you have no clue where that content may end up in someone's mailbox or someone's ears a year or so from now. As long as it's evergreen content, you have to keep that in mind. So consistency, market. I always say from a growth standpoint, marketing is a tough piece. But there's so many ways to get your message out there, whether it's the guest that you're helping promote, whether it's your own newsletter, or it's reaching out to all these other communities that may find it of value of what you have to say. And that goes back to relationships. There's so much tied to podcasting and relationships, which is what I love about the community in the first place.
How should the audience reach out and follow your work, Greg, and connect with you?
I live on LinkedIn. I know, it's funny. I don't have a website. I don't have a newsletter. I am the do as I say, not as I do kind of person, but LinkedIn is where I live and I'm constantly posting. So if you do have a podcast, every Monday, I'm promoting 3 podcasts that I think people should listen to. Hit me up. Let me know. Hey, Greg, I would love for you to check this out. I may or may not, because depending on what industry it is, I may be like, I really can't talk about surgery. Like, that's probably not going to entertain me. But I've done so many health related podcasts, which is another reason why we continue to talk and work together.
Greg, you've been really generous with your time before this conference, inspiring me, encouraging me to do this summit, and with us here in our audience, actually recording this and sharing this content. I'm sure people will be reaching out to you. Thank you so much as we publish this publicly, as we continue to drive people to go and get all 36 of the sessions that we have planned. So thank you, Greg, for your time and for your interest and support of what we're doing here.
Thank you so much. And I can't wait for the future of this and continue to see what you do.